testing machines that we're going to make immediately available, as in today. The public schools, the private schools that are in those zip codes, I strongly encourage to request a rapid testing machine and have them start testing their students. Rapid testing machine is 15 minutes turnaround for a test. You can do 4 per hour. We can make those available today, tomorrow. We can provide staff, Department of Health staff, to operate those machines if the local governments can't. That's every public and private school in those zip codes. To the local governments with those zip codes, this is same offer. We will deploy rapid testing machines, 15-minute turnaround, to local governments to focus on those cluster zip codes. Also, local government should focus on those cluster zip codes in terms of mask enforcement and compliance enforcement, in addition to testing. But testing, mask compliance, social distancing requirements, those zip codes, bars, restaurants, masks, and additional testing. And we have 200 machines that we will earmark just for that cluster. The key with these clusters is to jump on them quickly, attack them from all sides, get the testing so you can do contact tracing and you can isolate, get mask compliance up, hand sanitizer, and gathering compliance, bars, restaurants, etc. We will be contacting the local governments and the schools, but to accelerate this, I'm calling on the local governments and the schools to contact us to, if they need the machines, if they can use the machines, and we'll send staff. But public school, private schools, and local governments. One other point, there are a number of homeless encampments, primarily in urban areas across the state. People have been complaining about them, as they should. Not only is a homeless encampment a violation of that homeless person's dignity, it's also a public health threat now. People get nervous when they walk past them. So it's a public health threat for people who come in contact with homeless people on the street, and it's a public health threat for homeless people. A number of local governments closed shelters during COVID. The state will put out guidance. They should reopen those shelters, and they should reopen COVID-safe shelters. We know how to open schools. We know how to open restaurants. We know how to open flexible art space. We know how to open shelters. The weather's getting cold. Nobody should be living on the street. Nobody should be living on the street, especially in the middle of a global health pandemic. The public is anxious for their own public health, and I understand that. I'm anxious about the health of homeless people. The cities, counties also, should reopen their shelters. We'll put out guidance early this week on COVID safe, but they know basically how to make a facility COVID safe because they've all been doing it on a number of applications. But the shelters have to open. It's getting cold. Get homeless people off the streets and into a safe shelter. Okay, let's take a couple of questions, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the Q&A session. Please, you may press *1 on your telephone keypad if you want to ask your question. Please stand by while we compile the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from the line of Andrew Donovan from News Channel 9. Your line is now open.
Good afternoon, Governor. How are you?
Good. How are you, Mr. Donovan?
Doing very well. Onondaga County's largest absentee landlord is Shoppingtown Mall. It has not reopened under the state's new COVID restrictions for malls. It is under bankruptcy proceedings for unpaid taxes to Onondaga County, and last week it gave its small business tenants eviction notices that they have to vacate the mall in 30 days. It doesn't sound like the mall will reopen to the public ever. Most large tenants have already left because it is a dying mall, so this mainly affects the small business tenants. Do any of your eviction protections help these businesses, and what would you say about the situation involving Shoppingtown Mall in Onondaga County?
There is commercial eviction protection that we have. You mentioned it. Is it now in a bankruptcy proceeding?
It is. It filed for bankruptcy, I believe, earlier this year or late last year. It was in bankruptcy before the COVID pandemic.
Well, it's a legal question. I will check. Beth Garvey, who's on the phone, will check, and she will call you back with the press office. A bankrupt shopping mall, does the executive order on commercial evictions apply? That's the question. Okay, Beth?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, sir. She'll call you back forthwith.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you so much.
Your next question comes from the line of Dan Clark from PBS. Your line is now open.
Hi, Governor. How are you?
Good, Brother Dan. How we doing?
Very good, thank you. I'm looking into my crystal ball, and I can hear local governments saying that they don't have the money to reopen these homeless shelters. What do you say to them?
I don't think it's going to be a question of the funding for the shelters. Well, look, they can say they don't have the funding for anything, right? Nobody has the funding for anything right about now. But what caused the shelter staff, the local governments haven't laid off the shelter staff. The staff is still there. What they didn't have was they closed them when we closed schools and everything else because of COVID. They didn't lay off the staff. We now understand how to open a facility that is COVID protected, right? Obviously, when you can open a school with children, you cross the bridge where you can do this safely. And we believe we can do it safely. So they have the staff. We'll do state guidance that will come out tomorrow. But it's not going to be anything that you haven't heard before. 6 feet between beds, mask wearing, hand sanitizer, clean the facility, sanitize the facility, testing available at the facility. So it's the guidance that we have been doing applied to a shelter. But then it's cold. You have people on the street. It's a problem in the upstate cities. It's a problem in New York City. And it's aggravating it this year is it's not just their health that's jeopardized. It's also the public health, people who are walking past, etc. So we know how to do it. We just have to do it, and we have to do it quickly. And I don't want the homeless population to be overlooked, right? Parents want their kids to go back to school. We all do, yes. We want to go to a bar. We want to go to a restaurant, yes. And maybe homeless people don't have as loud a constituency, but I've worked on the issue all my life, and they have me, and I'm advocating open the shelters, get them off the streets. They need help.
Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, Dan.
Your next
One more,
question
operator. Yeah.
Your next question comes from the line of Bart Jones from USTA. Your line is now open.
Hi, Governor.
How are we doing, Bart? Good to hear your voice.
In here. Listen, there seems to be a little bit of an elephant in the room here, maybe with these clusters we're talking about. There have been some officials in the city last week saying that, many of these neighborhoods are, heavily Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods. We had some doctors, Jewish doctors on Long Island, writing a letter last week indicating that they were concerned about some of the Jewish neighborhoods, the Orthodox neighborhoods. Is this what we're talking about potentially? And can you kind of name some of these neighborhoods that you read off in those zip codes? I know it's Yom Kippur, a very sensitive time, but it's a public health crisis. So is this kind of what we're dealing with? Yeah,
elephant in the room, Bart. I thought you were going Republican Democrat with the elephant in the room. No. I have the zip codes. We're calling the local governments. I don't have the neighborhoods beyond the zip codes. I know what you're referring to, but we'll have a conversation with the local governments, and then whatever it is, it is. I said last week that these rules apply to all religious gatherings and religious celebrations. I know it's Yom Kippur, and we honor that. But whether you're Jewish, Catholic, Muslim, I said last week, it applies to everyone equally. Public health is public health. And I have no issue. I'm a Catholic. This applies to churches. I canceled St. Patrick's Day parade, which is in many ways it's not technically a religious holiday, a Catholic holiday, but it may as well be. It doesn't matter. This is a public health concern across the board, and that's what we're going to be working on with the local governments. But I also, I'm saying today, I want a quick response from the public and the private schools and the local governments in those areas, because whatever the population, the answer is going to be the same. It's compliance. The local governments, what I've gone through on Long Island, they have to do compliance. And mask compliance, gathering compliance, restaurant compliance, it has to be done by the local governments. Otherwise, you're going to see a more drastic alternative, which is going to be a closing down. So if a local government is worried they don't want to do compliance because they don't want to offend someone, it doesn't work, because you'll offend them even more deeply if you start doing close downs, and that's what's going to happen. Okay, operator, thank you very much. Thank you guys for jumping back on the phone, but I had that additional information. I wanted to share it with you. Thank you. Thanks, bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude.